Is it?
Not yet, but if you can't, it's okay. You know, it's right at the top, slideshow.
Yeah, I know. I see where it is, but I see.
Press from beginning.
Yeah.
Go to from beginning.
Yeah. Okay. I think, yeah.
There, that's right. Yeah. Good. Thank you.
All right. Okay, no, that's fine. You tell me when I should start.
Yes, I think we can start.
Is there anyone in there?
No, nobody is here, but we can record.
Okay.
And then I'll make the recording available after the time.
Okay.
Just to say again to the students, very important that you do the discussion forums. We will supply feedback to about 10 of you, and you can look at that feedback to get an impression of what to do. Very important because in assessment 5, you need to report back in the portfolio about all your activities throughout the semester. So that means discussion forums and also the assignments or the assessments that you've done. So it's again Dr. Hannah Dunga that's with us, that's going to provide the lesson. I will start from next week. I'll do lesson 3 to 5, and then she'll do lesson 6 again. And we also have Miss Pendile Nguenya. So those are our lecturers, and I'm the primary lecturer, Prof. Robinson. Over to you, Dr. Dunga.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I wish it was a full class, then it would be an interactive class, but anyway. So today we're covering chapter 3, that is the ethics in research. As you may recall, last time we covered the basics of research. It was quite a lot of information, which we said at the end of the lesson, since it was just a slideshow, I should say, a walkover, but afterwards they said you should go and recap so that you should get better understanding of what was discussed. So today we're just going to continue on where we stopped from last time, and today we'll look at the ethics in research, which is chapter 3. That's from page 65. So as you may recall, last time we spoke about research. You say, what is research? And we had said research basically is we as researchers, we're just trying to get information from source, if I may put it. So you get either information from source or validated information, not just hearsays and so on. So that information can be from source as to where you go and interview people and you get the information. And another way would be you get information that was already collected by reliable sources. For instance, if you're in here in South Africa, from the social science perspective, would say that's SA or even World Bank, Reserve Bank. Those are some of the valid sources where you can get information that is authentic. So just continuing from there, so now as you go collect the data or you go and obtain the data, there are ethical considerations that you have to adhere to. So that is what we look at in this session. I don't know. I'm not able to. I don't know what's happening. I'm not able to. Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, those are basically the learning outcomes. I don't have to really go into detail. As you know, this will just be a walkover whereby I'll just give you the synopsis, and then thereafter you are going to read more from the from the book. So from the definition itself, we'd say, what does research ethics in? And then in the book it explains that ethics, research ethics entails a way of conducting the research enterprise such that the 3 fundamental principles have to be adhered to. That is respect, beneficence, and the justice they are upheld. So remember, you're dealing with people. It could be you're dealing with people, you're dealing with animals, but there has to be integrity, there has to be respect, there has to be justice as to when you are going to collect the data. as well as a code of guidelines on how to conduct scientific research in a morally accepted way, and as well as the principles and standards that help researchers to uphold the value and standards of knowledge construction. So further to this, we see that research ethics principles are universal, right? If you just want to tackle on the principles, there are principles in when you're conducting research or when you, in terms of ethics, from the ethics perspective, where we find that the research ethics principles are universal, meaning that it's a worldwide concept, right? Which in each and every organization has got its own, especially those that are into research, they've got their own committees that now look at these ethical considerations if someone else is to conduct a research. But now we find that the interpretation and application of these principles should or are reflected in different ways. And for some time, you find that most people, I think when towards the end or as we go along, there'll be a better description of what we entail when you talk of secondary and primary data. So in a nutshell, primary data is where you're collecting data from source. You are the one who is actually going to ask questions from the participants. And whilst secondary data, you're using data that was already collected by someone else, though it's validated, right? So I've given examples of, let's say you're using data from World Bank, Stats SA, or Reserve Bank. So those type of data would call them secondary data because you are not the one who is going to collect the data. So there's been arguments to say that when it comes to ethics, it's only that ethics should only be applied to those that are collecting data from the primary source. But anyway, that depends on organization by organization. But I think it's not only about collecting the data, but it's just the ethics in it, like in a nutshell, to say whether it's primary or secondary data, but what were the ethics that were involved in terms of collecting the data? What were ethical considerations that were involved? So if you talk of secondary data, though you're not the one who's going to collect the data, but you see that there are things that you have to adhere to say that once you get that information, the data that you have gotten from whatever source, how are you going to keep that data? I know that sometimes, most of the times, this data is readily available on a worldwide domain, but still there has to be you as a person, you have to be you have to actually specify as to how you're going to use that data. And I know that even some data sets or some like for instance World Bank, for you to use World Bank data, there has to be I think you fill in a form where you have to state what are you going to use the data for? Is it for just for your research, or is it for what? And then after that, they release the data to you. So that's why it is important, whether primary or secondary data, there has to be ethical considerations that you have to apply to. So as you can see, that the argument is not just about collecting the data and then ethics, but it's also in general, what are you going to use the data for if you're using the secondary data and so on. So I guess, and then there are principles that you have to follow, right? Research ethics brings dignity and respect to research, and then all parties that are involved should be able should be respected, especially the study subjects. When you talk of the study subjects, we're talking of the people that you are collecting the data from. It could be animals, it could be human beings, all of them, even animals. They also have to be protected, right? And then there are 4 reasons why one needs to consider research ethics. And these are for professional responsibility, whereby when you're conducting research in an ethical manner, in the responsibility, it is the responsibility of every researcher. And then as well to avoid reputational damage. For instance, you see when you're collecting this data, some of the information that you're collecting from the people is private, right? So you have to avoid that of reputation damage. So for instance, you want to collect data, you're a health economist, right? You want to collect data on HIV and AIDS, for instance, right? So there has to be specific questions that you can ask them. You can't ask someone directly to say, first of all, what is your name? What is your age? Or how are you? What is your HIV status? Already, if you do that, that means you are giving out when you're going to present your results. you're already specifying to say that, narrowing down your search to say this is a type, this is a person, the name is so-and-so, they're HIV positive, and so on and so forth, which will actually damage their reputation. So that is unethical to do. So there are measures, there are guidelines that would guide you to say, okay, when you want to go and collect such type of data, what would you do? What are some of the questions that you'd pose to the people, right? And then research, further to this, research can be harmful, very harmful, where research can hurt anyone, any of the key stakeholders, such as the participants, researchers, institutions, and research communities. Sometimes maybe you're doing a research on a specific company, right? And you're asking questions that are just private to the company. For instance, how are their finances? How are they doing? How do they conduct ABCD? You know, there's some questions that you're not allowed to ask, because if you go and present those results, I mean, it's just damaging that whatever institution, their reputation and so on. So that is, in a nutshell, why ethics is important. So that is why we all have to adhere to that as researchers, as students, and so on. You have to go and abide by the rules that are applied in terms of ethics.
And
so when you
Dr. Dunga, can I just add something here?
Yes.
I just wanted to point out that assessment 1 is also about why M&D students might need ethical clearance. Okay. And these 4 reasons are important for them to take note of, specifically, especially because they have to apply for ethical clearance. And for these 4 reasons, they need to apply for ethical clearance also. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. And then the fourth one is that one of to avoid litigation, right? Where researchers and their institutions of affiliation may be sued for damages caused by unethical conduct. That is very, very important, right? Because remember, you as a student, when you are conducting your research, it's not you as an individual. You're being represented by a certain university. So that's why it is very important that you have to go and apply for the ethics, so that if anything comes up to say maybe you are being sued or what, I mean, you can come up and say that, but you know what, I'd adhered to all the rules that was given by the university to say this is what I have to follow, and therefore that the onus is not going to be on you. But if, for instance, you are found to say that you never adhered to the rules of ethical consideration, and you are found to be guilty, I mean, that would be upon you, and in the effects afterwards sometimes may not be good. You may be persecuted, you may be jailed, you may be your certificate or your degree can actually be scraped off from you. So it's actually very serious than what we think. Okay, so it says that adhering to research ethics leads to research and scientific integrity as well, and thus research ethics is important in guiding various areas of research, such as research misconduct, collaboration issues, peer review. I'm not going to go into detail, but you may go and read in the book. Conflict of interest or obligation, complicity and funding sources, animal subject research. As I've said, that animals, though they are not human beings, they cannot speak, but they also have to be protected. And human beings are the ones that have to protect animals. So even when they're coming up with a research, ethics says that is pertaining to animals and that is pertaining to human beings. Animals are also as important as human beings are, right? And then there's that one of human subject research. So all these are factors that I encourage shortcuts and mismaneuvers or mismaneuvers or that influence research integrity. So if you'd notice, or if you'd just add on to this, most of the times, like for instance, you as a researcher or you as a student, when you're doing this research, remember it's of benefit to you, because you as a student, it's adding value to your academics, whereby now if you're doing your master's, you graduate with a master's or a PhD and so on. So mostly it's advantageous to you. That's why if there's this thing of ethics, because if it's advantageous to you, it's not advantageous to the person that you are collecting the data from, in a nutshell, right? Though in the longer run, because after this, of course, you are going to give in recommendations that have to be used by the policymakers, but let's just take it at face value. You are the one who's going to receive the immediate benefit out of this. So that is why, just to make sure that the other parties are protected as well. That's why they bring in this ethical consideration. And further to this, remember, if you're doing it for your own benefit, let's say you're doing it for research purposes as a module, or as for degree purposes, your main aim is just for you to graduate. But it should be beyond that. It's not just for you to graduate, but it's also about the integrity and so on and so forth. As you are pursuing your degree, make sure that you're not leaving a mess behind. Further to this, as you go on within your academics, some of them may do your PhDs and become academicians. There are set rules that you have to follow. For instance, you have to publish articles and so on and so forth, and there are rewards that you get from there as well. So it's not just about you publishing, it's not just about the numbers of how many you're going to publish, but also the quality of it as well. You get it? So in the end, I think with the ethics as well, that's where it's going to say that we're not just looking at the numbers, we're just not looking at with the PhDs, but we also want to look at this from the ethical perspective to say, whilst they were doing their research, did they apply all the ethical measures and so on and so forth, so that no one else is left out and injured, right? So further to this, we're going to look at the, I think today I'm a bit slow, but I don't know why I'm not able to. I just want, can you, Prof, can you just, let's see if I'll be able to. All right, I just wanted to change the slide. So further to this, we're going to look at the foundations of ethics in research. So it should be noted that the concept of ethics is not confined to research only, but also pertains to everyday conduct, to say the way we conduct ourselves on a day-to-day basis. We have to conduct ourselves in an ethical manner, how we relate to other people. So you can see that as you upgrading your education, you're learning more on things that you did not know when you're doing your thing. What's this metric? This thing of just to teach someone on how you behave yourself in a better way as a citizen, behave yourself in a better way, conduct yourself ethically. Remember now that you're not going to obtain the highest degree, meaning that you'll be in those high ranks, the job opportunities that you get, there'll be those that are in high ranks, and you are the one that will have to set rules and regulations and everything. So minding that once you get there, you should get there well educated, that you'll be able to follow all the ethical measures and so on and so forth. So yeah. So lessons on how one ought to conduct oneself in relation to the other and the environment around them are then applied to research, resulting in research ethics. So research ethics may be summarized as a discipline with what is proper course of action for a man, or a branch of philosophy that looks at what is good and what is bad, or a system of obligation that we have towards others, the moral philosophy, which involves systematizing, defending, recommending concepts of right and wrong behavior, or a study of principles guiding conduct on the part of the individual within the context of social interaction and community. So if you can see just from these descriptions I've given here, to say that it is very important, I think, to adhere to the ethical rules. And then further to this, you find that if you do that, in research, in ethics, research ethics pursuits of truth. They say truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So it's all about integrity. It's all about being honest when you are doing and be, what can I say? You have to be honest and be transparent as well, so that no one picks out any fault in what you're doing. Remember, the main aim is to improve our community, improve the country, and so on and so forth. So as you're doing that, remember, you're dealing with people, you're helping others who are not at the position that you are at. So make sure that whatever you do it ethically, so that it doesn't harm anyone, right? Because in the end, these things also have consequences, right? And then further to this, the book just describes, describes about the 3 ethics categories, which you may just want to go and revise in your own time. And it further, there's so much literature that is there about the international developments of research and so on. I think that is just some literature you'd want to just go and revise. And then here we look at the ethical consideration at different stages of research. That also you may just want to go and revise. And then here we have got the key research steps that is very important. And so we've got the first one is that one of the conceptualization and design of the study. So these are some of the steps that you have to follow when you going about with your ethics. And then that is the first one of conceptualizing and design of the study. That is the scientific merit, identify risk and ways to mitigate the risk. And then the next one is when participants are recruited, what do you do at that stage? And then during the intervention or measurement procedures to which participants are subjected, right? And what you also have to do when it comes to that. And then at the other stages in the release of results that you've obtained, where you should we talk of issues of protection of confidentiality and anonymity, and then as well as after the release of the results, that you ensure that participants and communities involved in the research benefit. So these are some of the key research steps and ethical considerations that one has to follow. And then we find that in most cases, when these ethical considerations are not made, the conduct is unethical. So if you don't follow this, you find that you'd be on the other side that is being unethical. And then it may be that one may gain a better understanding of research ethics by understanding what they call it's examples of unethical research conduct, which the first one is that of deception. And that is issues of full disclosure, right? If you don't disclose fully, or if you withhold information about the main aim of the study, that is part of deception, because you're not, you've got a hidden agenda, I would say. You've got a hidden agenda, but you're not bringing it out, because you know that if you bring that out, you'll not be allowed to conduct your study. And then the other one is that one of misleading participants about the risk inherent in the participating of the study. I'm going to just explain once you come up with your questionnaire, what you have to incorporate in there as we go along. So there is another one of that one of plagiarism, which is a very, very important concept to note, is that one of plagiarism. There, when you're writing your research, make sure that you don't copy and paste. You don't get someone's information. You know already that this information was written by Dunga in 2022 or 2021, 1992 or whatever, and then you just take that and then you put it in your research as it's something that you are the one who has actually written that. That is unethical, that we call that plagiarism. And plagiarism is very, very, very serious offense, whereby you can graduate with a PhD. For instance, someone graduated with a PhD in 1999, and we are here in 2024, and then they come to realize to say that in a document in 1994 of your PhD, there was a statement that you plagiarized. You written some statement that was not yours and you put it there as your own. You mean your PhD can actually be revoked after so many years. So it's a very serious offense, of which now at this level where you're just starting, you need to start learning to say, when you get information that is not yours, you have to cite to say this was written by so and so. And not only just to copy paste, you may also have to change it and put it in your own words, whereby still giving a reference to where you've gotten that information from, right? And there's conducting research that does not have a scientific base, and then lack of objectivity and integrity in the design and the conduct of research. That one is also an example of unethical research conduct. There's quite a lot more that I just want you to go and read in your own time. That is fabrication of falsification of data. You know, some people would just sit. I mean, you want to conduct research on household survey, for instance, right? It's your research is about households, so you have to go and collect information from different households. For instance, your sample size is 100, 1,000. you know, some people feel like that's too much work to do. Then they'll just sit on a tree, get the questionnaire, start answering them one by one, as if they've collected that data from individuals. That is what part of fabrication or falsification of data, which is also unethical, very much unethical. Not following the appropriate ascription of authorship to a publication, which I've just discussed. To say this, I think it's also part of plagiarism, where who qualifies to be an author. Some individuals may simply need to be acknowledged rather than listed as authors. I mean, and then not respecting the right to privacy, not respecting the right to anonymity and confidentiality, not respecting the rights of vulnerable groups. For instance, you are collecting data on the old age, right? Where you're collecting data about old people or people that have gone insane and so on and so forth. You know, those people are vulnerable, or even children. You see, that's why it's not allowed for you to go and collect your data from children. You have to ask the head of household. They have to give you information about the children, because these are vulnerable people and you don't want to put yourself to that disadvantage where now you are found to not respect the rights of vulnerable groups, right? And then not having due consideration for the environment. I think the environment is that one of like the animals can be there and so many other whatever you'd want to incorporate in terms of the environment. So those are some of the examples of unethical research conduct. And then further to this, we'll just look at the guiding principles of research ethics, I think, which you may want to go and revise. I think it's in a table, figure 3.3, that is on page 75. That is justice, respect, benefit. I think I already discussed this of the 4 principles. That is the justice, respect, and the beneficence, right? These are the 3 guiding principles of research ethics. You may just want to go and revise that as well. And then so their institution reviews or bodies or research ethics committees in each and every research organization that is available or present in each country, in each community. For instance, as researchers, you find that at a university, you'd find that there's a research ethics committee that looks at the ethical considerations or ethical guidelines or ethical processes that have to be adhered to from the students. Even if you go to a research, maybe it's a research organization that is just doing research, there's also a committee that looks into that. And these committees answer to the bodies of like it could be a universal body. So there's a universal body that has got its guidelines of what has to be followed in terms of ethics. So at a country level, you find that there are also those bodies or institutions that look at the ethics, and then those are now distributed amongst any group that is present that is doing research. So for instance, in a high education, that is universities, research organizations, and so on and so forth. And now it's even further, because you see there's all this thing of POPI Acts that has come up and so on. So you'd also find this in different settings. You find in the bank, there are also ethical considerations that they have to adhere to. So I guess it's in different disciplines that have to follow the ethical considerations, right? So for instance, let's give an example of in the institution like the university. UNISA, for instance, it's got an ethical ethics a committee that looks. So for instance, you as a student, you're doing your master's, you have to, before even submitting I think you do your chapter 1, chapter 2, by the time you're doing your methodology chapter, right, you have to apply for your ethics clearance, because now you're talking of your data and so on and so forth. So there's a form that you have to fill and then send it to that committee, and you have to do it in good time, because sometimes the processes take a bit long. There's a back and forth whereby maybe your form will be sent back to say, go fix this and that. So then you have to do it in good time so that you don't, your study is not delayed. So for instance, we've got that one at UNISA of the Research Ethics Committee. Everyone else, even no matter who you are, it doesn't matter who you are, what rank you're a professor, you're what, we all have to adhere to that. We all submit our forms. For instance, like myself, if I'm conducting any research, I've got an article that I want to write, I've got my data and everything, I have to fill in the form and adhere to the rules, because that's the only way I can go through my ethics clearance, right? So with the ethics clearance, they're just discussing on what committees are there. So I've talked of the timing of approvals, whereby now you have to do it in good time because sometimes it may take long. What members of the Research Ethics Committee look for in an ethics proposal. So all this is linked to what the Ethics Committee will do. So it will look at what the members of Research Ethics Committee look for in the Ethics Committee. Let's see the ethics application, the ethics review process. I think that is discussed in page, it says the page 76. I think you may just want to go and revise on that, right? And then further to this, we just want to look at the timing of approvals. I think that one we've already highlighted. And what are some of the documentation that you have to submit for review? So all those guidelines are given to you from the ethics committee to say, okay, there's a set form there whereby you just ask your supervisor to say, you have to fill in the form. So your supervisor already knows what has to be done. So there's a form that you as an applicant, not your supervisor, because they are not the owners of that research or study. So you as an applicant, you have to fill in that form. You have to sign to say that whatever you have presented or submitted in that form is true, is valid. And if anything else, you are the one who's answerable. So it's you and the ethics committee. The ethics committee will give you the guidelines to say, no, this you can't do, that you can't do. Let's see your questionnaire. It's asking about the name of the person. No, that one, take it out. It's asking you about the gender. Okay, gender, yeah, gender, male or female, it's fine. It's asking you about the age of the population. What is your sample size? That is, where are you conducting this research? Because sometimes you may say, okay, we want to ask about, there's a question of a certain question. Let's say your study is on University of South Africa, right? So this University of South Africa, anyway, maybe it's a large sample size, but let's look at the university that is small. And then that one, your research is on a department, members of staff in a certain department of a university. You see, you've narrowed so much your research, whereby now chances of someone being able to know that in this one they're talking about that one are so evident, as compared to if you've got now a larger, you're looking at universities in South Africa. So if you're looking at universities in South Africa, I mean, it's how would someone guess to say the sample is the University of South Africa? The sampling, maybe you've picked 2 from Pretoria, 2 from Johannesburg, 2 from Cape Town, you get that. So in the end, it's difficult for someone to know exactly to say that you're talking about this person, rather than specifying in certain university, in a department. So if you go with such type of a questionnaire, you find that you may have issues with the ethical committee to say, no. I think your study is too specific to a certain department and so on and so. It's too specific, whereby now it's easier for one to tell who is this person you're talking about. So yeah. And then the key documents that you have to submit, it's also there in the, I think the form, they will be able to tell you to say that you get that information, say these are some of the forms that you have, the documents that you have to submit. And the appendices, information of participants, recruitment information, informed consent. When you're coming up with your questionnaire, you have to, first of all, let's say you've got your questionnaire, the first page has to be a letter from you, whereby now you're explaining to this respondent to say, these are, okay, in this questionnaire, this is what you should expect. My name is so. I'm from this university. I'm conducting a study. In my studies on ABCD, and the type of data that I'd want to collect from you is ABCD. So that person has, you're asking for consent. That person has to accept, because it's voluntary. This thing is not by force. If they don't want, you go to the next person. It's voluntary. You can come to me and say, no, I want to collect data on female, what, I'll say, I'm not interested. Then you go to the next person to ask, right? And then here it says stages of informed consent, that I find on page 79, and there's examples and so on. And we have this one of gatekeepers. what we mean when you talk of gatekeepers. So for instance, if you want to go and collect data from UNISA, right? You don't just rock up there, though you're a student at UNISA, but you don't just go there, start asking students. It's about students and entrepreneurship or whatever, right? Or yes, any topic that you, and then you just one day rock up once you get, and then you can't do that. You have to ask from the parent. Yeah. So if I would say the parent, the gatekeeper is the university itself. So you have there's a division or department that you can go to and ask to say that, okay, I want to conduct this research, is on this. Can I get a gatekeepers later? So for instance, further to this, maybe we'll look at you want to go and collect data from a certain company, right? You don't just rock up in that company. They'll tell you, who are you? We don't even know you. So that company, it's a back and forth, because that company will ask you, who are you? Okay, I'm from University of South Africa. Where is your letter from University of South Africa? They would ask you to say that, who has given you consent from University of South Africa to collect this data? So you have to present to them a certain, whether it's a letter from the university or what, to say that, okay, this is our student. She wants to collect data from your institution on ABCD. So they'll now give you a gatekeeper's data. So, okay, now we allow you to come and collect data from us. So can you see that it's quite, it's not an easy process, but it's doable, right? So I think the book gives an example of how an informed consent has to look like, and I think as well as a gatekeeper's letter, or what is in there and how it has to look like. So I think there's an example in there. So it has to be, you have to have the address, your gatekeeper's address, what the study involved, a recruitment questionnaire, and then you also have to sign at the end, right? And then we look at the Protection of Personal Information Act. How do you keep someone's information? So as I said, there are all these POPI acts that have come in and so on and so forth. I think that you may just want to go and read, because now if you get, as I said, when you get information from people, even with the ethics, or as you get the ethics clearance, you have to, in the form there's some way that you have to explain on how you're going to store that data. Because once you get that information, remember, even though you haven't asked about the names and what have you, all those private information, but still you're getting data from a certain company, a certain institution, you have to keep that some way. So as a university, I think there's a way on how they will keep that data. So they'll say, okay, this data will be kept under the lock of maybe the investor will keep this data, and that data has to be kept for a certain period of time. After that, it has to be discarded. So all that you should be able to get from the university. So it depends with university, from institution to institution, how they interpret the ethics, their ethics. But now, in a nutshell, all of them are abiding to the rules from the universal perspective. So I think I don't know, I think that is all about today, about the ethics. If I don't know, there's anything else that Prof would like to add on to this.
No, thank you. That was perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Dunga. I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.